My roommate left her diary open, by accident. The last line had my name, written 3 times her handwriting. I recognized it before I even registered what I was looking at. The looping lowercase, the way every word leans slightly right. My name. 3 times. On the last page of a diary that was never supposed to be open. I should have closed it. I know that. I want to say I was going to, that I had every intention of looking away the second I understood what I was seeing. But the truth is, I stood there in our kitchen at 6:47 in the evening with a bag of groceries cutting into my palm and read every single word. Her name was Mara. Is Mara. She has been my roommate for 11 months, 3 weeks, and 4 days. Not that I have been keeping track, except that I have absolutely been keeping track. The kind of counting you do without meaning to. The way you start noting the accumulation of something before you have admitted to yourself that it means anything. Mara, who leaves the coffee running when she goes to work so the apartment smells like morning when I get up. Mara, who laughs at her own jokes a full beat before the punchline and somehow makes it charming instead of annoying. Mara, who texts me photos of dogs she sees on her commute. Just the dog and nothing else. No caption, no context. And I have saved every single one in an album on my phone that I have never given a name. Mara, who once sat on our bathroom floor with me at midnight after a phone call that broke me in half and said absolutely nothing useful and somehow made it the only thing that helped. Mara, who I have been carefully, deliberately, exhaustingly not saying anything to for 11 months and 3 weeks and 4 days. I need you to understand who Mara is before I tell you what the diary said, because the story doesn't make sense without the context of 11 months of small evidence. She is the kind of person who remembers how you take your coffee and then never mentions that she remembered. She just makes it that way. Quietly, without making it a thing. She is the kind of person who, when you are clearly upset, but haven't said so, doesn't ask what's wrong. She just stays nearby. She rearranges her evening to be in the same room and puts something on television and lets you decide what the evening is. I have watched her do this with me 3 times across 11 months, and every time I have had the specific feeling of being known by someone who knows better than to say it out loud. She had never said anything about the way she looked at me in unguarded moments. I had never said anything about the fact that I noticed. We had built an entire life together on the careful foundation of not saying things, and it had been comfortable, and it had been enough, and it had not been enough at all. The diary was on the counter. She had left in a rush. I had heard the door, the scramble of keys, the particular sound of someone who remembered 3 things she forgot at the exact same moment. The journal was just there. Leather cover, dark green, the corner worn soft from being carried everywhere. I had seen her writing in it at the kitchen table, the pen moving fast, the other hand flat against the page, as if she was keeping the words from escaping. I had never read it. It had never occurred to me to. And then my name was on the last page. 3 times. Not in a love letter. Not in an entry that started with something like, "I think I have been falling for her and I don't know what to do." I need you to understand what I actually read, because the feeling of reading it was not the feeling I expected. The feeling was something closer to the bottom dropping out of a room. She had written, "I have to tell her. I have to tell her. I have to tell her." The repetition was not romantic. It was the repetition of someone who has said a thing so many times trying to make themselves brave enough to actually do it that the sentence has started to lose its shape on the page. I set down the groceries. I turned back a page and read the whole entry from the beginning. It had started 3 days earlier, dated the Wednesday before. She had written it in 2 ink colors, which meant she had put it down and come back to it, picked it up again, and continued where she had left off. The first section was almost measured, not calm, exactly, but the kind of controlled that costs something to maintain. It said she had received another message, that she had tried ignoring it, and ignoring had not worked, that she had tried replying, and replying had also not worked, that she was running low on options and lower on time. The word manageable appeared early in the entry and never again, like she had tried it on and found it had stopped fitting. The name she used was C. Just the single letter. She wrote it 8 times in that entry, and you learn a lot about a person from how they write the first letter of a name they are afraid to say in full. She wrote C the way you write something you wish you could cross out, but won't. Because crossing it out means acknowledging it is still there. She wrote, he said Sunday. Sunday was 3 days away. I closed the diary the way you close a door when something is still moving on the other side. I put the groceries away. I washed my hands at the sink and watched the water run over my wrists and thought about the fact that the woman I had been quietly loving for almost a year was carrying something bad enough that writing the first letter of a man's name had the weight of a stone. I thought about Sunday. I thought about the fact that she had written my name 3 times. Not his. Mine, I have to tell her. She came home at 9. I was on the couch when her key turned in the lock. I had the television on, some cooking competition, people sweating over a dessert that wouldn't set, and I had a glass of wine in my hand because I needed to be holding something. She came through the door with her coat half off and her bag over one shoulder, and she looked exactly the way she always looked. A little tired, a little somewhere else. Still somehow the most present person in any room she walked into. "You're up late," she said. "Couldn't sleep," I said. Which was true in the sense that I hadn't tried, and had no intention of trying. She dropped her bag on the chair she always drops her bag on. She looked at me for a second, the kind of look that lands differently when you know the other person has something inside them they haven't told you, and then she went to the kitchen for a glass of water. "Did you eat?" she called. "I put leftovers in the fridge," I said. "You're the best," she said. She is the best. That is the thing no one ever tells you about being in love with your roommate. You already have all the evidence, and it has been accumulating for months, and at some point you stop being able to explain it away, and you still can't say anything, because what is the sentence that doesn't risk everything? She came back and stood in the living room doorway with her glass of water, and watched the television without really seeing it. I watched her without watching her. The way you learn to look at things you are not supposed to be looking at. Her jaw was tight. There was something behind her eyes that she was keeping back the way you keep a door shut with your shoulder when the wind is on the other side. "Tough day?" I asked. She smiled. It was a real smile, which was the hardest part. She wasn't performing fine. She was still actually there with me, even while whatever was behind that door stayed exactly where it was. "Always," she said. Good night," I said. I sat with the television noise until I heard her door close, and then I sat in the silence for a long time thinking about what a person has to believe about herself to carry something that heavy, and keep smiling about it. The letter C. He said Sunday. I have to tell her. I thought about the version of Mara I had seen at the door, coat half off, a little tired, still smiling the real smile, and the version of Mara who had written that entry in 2 ink colors on a Wednesday she hadn't mentioned. I thought about how the 2 versions were not contradictions but the same person, and what it costs someone to hold that much together without it showing. I thought about the 11 months of evenings and mornings and late-night takeout containers on the coffee table, and the way she sometimes fell asleep reading on the couch, and left her book upside down on the armrest, and I thought about all the things I had decided not to say across all of that time. And I thought about how none of that mattered right now. Because whatever she had written in that journal was not about me. It was about her, and about something a man named C had told her would happen on Sunday. I turned the television off. I sat in the dark for a while. She had written my name 3 times and still come home and asked if I had eaten. The next morning she was in the kitchen before me, which was unusual. Mara runs on her own time. She is constitutionally a 9 o'clock person, trying to satisfy an 8 o'clock world. But when I came out at 7, she was already dressed, already standing at the counter with her coffee, looking at her phone with an expression I had now learned to read. The expression of someone receiving a message they would very much like to have never gotten. Her phone was face down by the time I poured my coffee. She asked if we needed dish soap. I said yes. That was the whole conversation. Except her phone buzzed once while her back was turned, and the preview loaded on the screen for exactly 1 second before it went dark. It said, "Don't make me do something you can't undo." No contact name, a number only. She had not saved it, which meant she had tried, at some point, not to have it. I looked at my coffee. I looked at the window above the sink. I said, carefully, "Mara, is everything okay?" She turned, and her face did something complicated, and resolved itself into fine in about 1/4 of a second. The speed of it was itself a kind of answer. "Of course," she said. "Why? You just seem like you're somewhere else." "I'm here," she said. She turned all the way to face me, both hands wrapped around her mug. "I'm right here." She was right there. And she was not there at all. And the thing about knowing someone well enough to love them quietly for almost a year is that you start to understand the exact dimensions of the space between their face and what is actually happening inside them. I did not push, but I kept the preview in my mind like a photograph all the way to work, and I read it again and again in every quiet moment I could find. Don't make me do something you can't undo. His name came out on Friday. I found out the way people always find out the things they were never meant to. Not through a confession, not through a confrontation, but through a coincidence so small and quiet it barely registered as one. I had gotten home 40 minutes early. Mara was in her room with the door open a crack, and she was on the phone. Not shouting. She was using the particular controlled register of someone trying very hard not to become a different voice, trying to hold the shape of composed when the pressure underneath was doing everything it could to change it. She said, "Connor, I need more time." She said, "That is not fair, and you know it." She said, "You cannot keep doing this to me." There was a long silence. Then she said, quietly, the way air leaves something I know. I stood in the hallway with my key still in my hand, and the particular sensation of someone who has just understood something they had been not understanding on purpose. "Connor, see," he said, "Sunday." Sunday was tomorrow. I went to my room and closed the door and sat on the edge of my bed and stayed very still for a while. I thought about a man named Connor who sent messages from an unsaved number and told Mara he would do something she could not undo. And I thought about the fact that she had been absorbing this through every Tuesday takeout and every Wednesday morning and every late evening on the couch. And none of it had shown. That told me something about what it had cost her to hide it. I thought about the way she had said his name. Not with anger, with the flattened tone of someone who has spent so long managing a feeling that they have worn it smooth. I know that tone. I have heard it in my own voice when I have talked about things that were bad enough to require the particular labor of not showing they were bad. I recognized it in hers, the way you recognize something in someone else's face that you have only ever seen in your own. I thought about I know. The last thing she had said on the phone. How much it costs to say I know to someone who is hurting you. How you have to hollow something out of yourself first to be able to say it calmly. And how that hollowing is cumulative, and how by the time you reach Sunday you are running on almost nothing. I have to tell her. She had written it 3 times. She had not told me. And the word yet suddenly felt very important. I knocked on her door at 7. She opened it in sweats and bare feet with her hair down, and for a moment we were just 2 people standing in a doorway, the way we had stood in 100 doorways across 11 months. There is a language to thresholds, the particular geography of 2 people who have gotten comfortable existing at the edge of each other's space. Something crossed her face when she read mine. "Hey," she said. "I need to ask you something," I said. "And I need you to not tell me you're fine." A small breath. "Okay, is someone threatening you?" The silence had a specific shape. She leaned against the doorframe and looked at a point past my shoulder for a moment before coming back. "It's complicated," she said. "Mara, I'm handling it, I promise. I heard you on the phone," I said. "Connor, I need more time. I came home early and the door was open a crack, and I heard you through it. I didn't mean to." She closed her eyes. When she opened them, something in them had changed, the held quality of a person who has been carrying a specific weight alone for a long time and has just felt another set of hands come up under it. "Come in," she said. She sat on the floor with her back against the bed, the way she does when something is serious. She gets closer to the ground, as if bracing against the weight of it. I sat in the chair across from her. She told me everything. His full name was Connor Vels. She had dated him for 2 years before she moved in with me. I had known this in the way you know the outline of someone's past. From references so sparse and flat-toned you understand, without being told that the chapter is closed and not particularly welcome. What I had not known was how the chapter had actually ended. He had photos. Private ones. The kind that exist inside a relationship and are fine until the relationship ends badly, at which point they stop being private and start being leverage. He had held them since the day she left, not deploying them immediately, just making sure she knew they existed, letting the possibility live between them like a thing she could not stop breathing around. 5 months ago, he had started making requests, not demands at first. Requests. Return a call. Vouch for him in a professional matter. Small things with the implicit understanding that compliance was the price of his continued silence. Then, larger things. Money, an invoice paid to a business that did not quite exist in any real sense. And then, most recently, the one that had cracked something open in her. Tell your roommate you need to move somewhere else. Tell her you are not as happy there as you pretend to be. Walk away. She had paid him twice. Not because she believed it would end. She had understood from the first payment that it would not end. That paying someone who is extorting you is an argument for continuing, not a settlement. She had paid him because the alternative had been worse, and she had needed time, and buying time had been the only move she could see. She said she was not ashamed of that. She said she had told herself she was ashamed of it for a while, and then stopped. Because being ashamed of surviving is a trap, and she had been in enough traps. What she was ashamed of, she said, was not telling me. She said it with the directness of someone who has been rehearsing a sentence for weeks and has finally decided to just say it plainly. He had wanted her to leave. And sitting alone with that request, she had realized she did not want to leave. And sitting with that realization, she had understood why. That made everything more complicated, she said. She was looking at her hands. The thumbnail on her left hand had been picked down past the point that was comfortable. I had noticed that for weeks and hadn't known what to read into it. "What does Sunday mean?" I said. She said it very quietly. "He gave me a deadline. Either I agree to move out, or he sends the photos Sunday night." Sunday was tomorrow. I sat with that for a moment. The weight of it, the fact that she had been living inside that countdown for however long and had done all of it looking exactly like herself, making coffee, asking if I had eaten, texting me dogs. "How long have you been managing this alone?" I asked. "Since the beginning," she said. "I didn't want to bring you into it. You have your license review coming up. The board thing at work, I know how much is riding on it. I didn't want anything messy getting close to your name while you were in the middle of that." She had been protecting me. Not because the threat was mine, but because she knew exactly where I was most exposed and had decided that keeping me out of the line of fire was worth whatever it cost her to stay in it alone. "He doesn't have anything on me," I said. She pressed her lips together. "He said he does." Something went very still in the center of my chest. "What did he say?" "That he had looked into you," she said. "He mentioned it the way he mentions everything, almost casually, like it was an afterthought. He didn't tell me what he'd found, just that he had something, and that if I tried to make things difficult for him, he knew how to make things difficult for the people I was close to. The specificity of it was the part that told me exactly what kind of person Connor Vels was. He had found the thing I had spent 7 years hoping had become unfindable. A sealed record is not an erased one. And he had looked for it. Not because he needed it yet. Because having it was the same thing as using it. The knowledge that he knew was the weapon. "I kept thinking I could manage it until it stopped," Mara said. "Buy time, comply on the small things, and hope the big ones never arrived. But the closer Sunday got, the more I understood that it was not going to stop on its own. And the more I understood that, the more I realized I was done choosing silence. That I was done absorbing it." She exhaled. I just hadn't figured out yet what done was supposed to look like. "You wrote my name," I said. She looked up. "In the journal," I said. "You left it on the counter." I came home, and it was open to the last page. The color in her face changed slowly, the way light moves. "I thought I put it in my bag," she said very quietly. "I was rushing. I thought I had." She stopped. Her expression did something complicated, moved through several things. "What did you read?" "I have to tell her," I said. 3 times. She was quiet for a moment. Outside, the city made its particular noise, the low, ongoing frequency of a place that does not stop for private things. "I've been trying to decide for weeks," she said at last, "whether to tell you and pull you into it, or keep carrying it alone and protect you from the edges. Every time I worked through it, every time I tried to figure out what exactly I was protecting, I kept coming back to you. And eventually I understood that coming back to you was not a side effect. It was the point. There are things you wait to hear for so long that when you finally hear them, the feeling is not relief. It is more like recognition, like your body already knew." "We have until tomorrow night," I said. "I know. Do you have all the texts?" "Yes, every single one. Since it started," she said. "The emails, too. There's an invoice he sent through a fake business account, and there's a voice memo. I recorded a phone call in March. 22 minutes of him making requests that anyone who listened would recognize as exactly what they were." "Then we have enough," I said. She looked at me the way you look at something you have been trying to bring into focus for a long time and have just finally managed to see clearly. We spent 3 hours going through the documentation together that night. She had more than she had told me, which is the thing about someone who is methodical and private. They are always further along than they let on. 11 screenshots arranged in chronological order, the timestamps intact. The voice memo from March, 22 minutes of his voice making requests dressed as options. Emails from a business address she had traced back to a sole proprietorship registered in his name. The invoice, paid, with the bank transfer record attached, which in context read exactly like what it was. Money extracted under duress from someone who could not say no without consequences. I called my attorney that night and left a message. She called me back at 6 the following morning, which told me something about what she had heard in my voice. I explained the situation. She asked 3 questions. She said we had more than enough to file, that the charges in our state carried a minimum that would end his professional standing before any trial date, that his name on a criminal complaint alone was the kind of thing that moves quickly in the relevant licensing boards. She said she would be ready to receive the documentation first thing Monday. Connor Vels knocked on our door at 8:45 on Sunday evening. I knew it was him from the quality of the silence that preceded the knock. Mara had gone still on the couch, in the specific way of someone who has been waiting for a particular sound and has just heard it arrive. She looked at me. I nodded once. She opened the door. He was the kind of man who enters rooms expecting them to rearrange themselves around him. Medium height, a good jacket, the composed confidence of someone who had never been told no by anyone with real consequences. He saw me on the couch and his face made a small, recalibrating adjustment. "Didn't know you had company," he said. "She lives here," Mara said. "Right," his eyes moved between us, measuring something. "I just came to hear your decision." "I have one," Mara said. He waited. "No," she said, "to all of it. Moving out, the money, any of it." "No," something rearranged behind his expression without quite disturbing the surface. He shifted slightly, the way a person shifts when they reach for the card they were saving. "Then you know what comes next," he said. "I do," she said, "and so do you." She held up her phone. On the screen was a screenshot of their conversation thread, his number, his words, every deadline and demand and veiled threat laid out in order, readable at a glance as exactly what it was. "There's also the voice recording from March 4th, she said. "And the emails from January and February, and the invoice with the transfer record attached to your business account, and an attorney who received copies of all of it yesterday morning and is available to file first thing Monday." She paused. "If anything leaves your phone tonight, the entire file goes to the police and to your licensing board. Coercive control and criminal extortion in this state carry a minimum of 2 years. Your name on a criminal charge ends your career before the trial date." I looked that up. He was very still. "Those were private conversations," he said. "They were crimes," she said. 3 words. She said them the way you say something you have known for a long time and are finally allowed to say out loud. He looked at me. I looked back. There was nothing for me to add. She had done every part of this herself, had been building it quietly and alone for weeks, and she had done it completely. He left, not with a final threat, not with a parting word. He made a small, recalibrating sound and turned and walked back down the hallway toward the elevator. Mara closed the door. She stood with her back against it, and one hand still on the knob, and she breathed. The kind of breathing you do when you have been not fully breathing for a long time and are only now remembering how it works. Then she slid down the door slightly, not all the way to the floor, just far enough to let the solid thing at her back hold some of what she had been holding alone. She looked at me from across the room. 2 weeks ago, she said. That's when I started building the file in earnest. When I decided I was done. You could have told me then, I said. I know. She met my eyes directly. I was afraid it would make you feel responsible for it. Like you were a target because of me, and that was somehow your burden to carry. The targeting was his doing, I said, not yours. She nodded. Slowly, the way you nod when you needed someone else to say a thing before you could let yourself fully hear it. She pushed off the door and crossed the room and sat beside me on the couch. Not at the opposite end, beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her shoulder near mine. She put her feet on the coffee table and looked at the ceiling for a moment, and then looked at me. Is there actually something he found? She asked. From before. Yes, I said. A Dewey. 7 years ago. The record is sealed. He could find the existence of it, but he could not use it without a legal basis to unseal the record. And there isn't one. I paused. I called my attorney this morning and confirmed. You moved fast, she said. I had to, I said. You left your diary open. She made a sound that was almost a laugh. The kind that comes when something wound very tight for a long time releases a little of the tension all at once. She looked at her hands. She looked at me. I really did leave it open on purpose, didn't I? She said. Not quite a question. I think so, I said. She was quiet for a moment. The city made its noise outside the window, the low, ongoing hum of a place that does not stop for private things. There was more in the entry, she said finally, than just the 3 lines at the bottom. I only read to the last page. The page before, she stopped. Reorganized, I wrote that I was afraid of a lot of things. The photos. My job. What he might do if I stopped complying. But I also wrote that the thing I had been most afraid of, the fear that had been in me the longest, longer than Connor by a long time, was finishing another year in this apartment, without ever saying out loud that I didn't want to be here with just anyone. That I had wanted to be here with you. Specifically, not because the rent is fair. Not because the location is convenient. She looked at her hands and then looked at me. Because of you. Because you sit on bathroom floors at midnight when someone needs that more than words. Because you save the dog photos. Because you have been right here for 11 months and I have been trying to find the sentence that doesn't make everything complicated. And there isn't one. There is no such sentence. There is just you, and the fact that every time I try to figure out what I am protecting, it comes back to you. And I think I knew for a while that I was done choosing silence, and I just needed to be brave enough to leave the page open. I had been waiting 11 months, 3 weeks and 4 days to be in this conversation. I had talked myself out of it methodically, every single time. The friendship is too good to risk. The timing is wrong. She doesn't feel this way, or she does and I'll still somehow ruin it. Every argument was reasonable. None of them were true. They were just the ways I had found to protect myself from the specific terror of being known by someone you love before you know whether they will stay. She had written my name 3 times, not as a declaration, as a decision. As herself choosing me before she had even worked out how to say it. I turned and looked at her. She was already looking at me. Hi, she said. Quietly, like finishing a sentence she had been writing for a year. Hi, I said. She reached over and looped 2 fingers around my wrist. Just that. 2 fingers, and the warmth of her hand, and the particular quality of a touch that has finally decided it is allowed to be a touch. We didn't kiss that night. I know that is probably not what you expected. We sat on the couch until past 11, and then we went to the kitchen, and I made tea, and she sat on the counter the way she always sits on the counter, and we talked until there was nothing left to keep contained. She told me about Connor from the very beginning, the full version, not the managed one, with all the weight of it. I told her about the Dewey, the real version, the one I have told maybe 2 people in 7 years. The one where I was 22 and terrified, and it was the worst year of my life, and also the year I finally decided to become someone I could live with. She listened the way she always listens, all the way through, without filling the quiet around difficult words with comfort, when what the difficult words needed was just to be in the air and respected. We filed the report Monday morning with my attorney present. A specialist in coercive control assisted with the filing and moved it quickly. My attorney said, when she reviewed the full file, that it was one of the more comprehensive documentations of coercive control she had received from a client who was not already in a formal legal proceeding, which was not a compliment she meant lightly. She said Mara had been thorough. I said I knew. I had not been surprised to find out Mara had been thorough. I have known for 11 months what kind of person Mara is. The licensing board received the complaint the same day. We do not know what happened after that. We do not need to. We have not heard from Connor Vels since. The documentation file still exists on a cloud server, backed up twice, and it will stay there as long as it needs to. We are still in the apartment. The following Tuesday, she made me coffee the way she always makes me coffee, and set it on the counter in front of me. When I reached for it, she had 2 fingers hooked into the sleeve of my sweater, and she said, very quietly, and without any preamble at all, I was thinking dinner. Somewhere with tablecloths. Whenever you want. You can decide what that means later. I know what it means, I said. She smiled. The full one, the unguarded one, the one she uses when she laughs before the punchline because she can't help it. Yeah, she said. I know you do. I have thought about the 3 lines a lot since then, not obsessively, but the way you returned to a thing that changed the shape of a year, where you were standing when it happened, what the light was doing, the worn corner of a green leather cover on a kitchen counter. She was not writing my name because she was in love with me and had to put it somewhere, though that was part of it. She was writing it because protecting me had become the same thing as loving me, and she was trying, alone in our kitchen before she ran out the door, to be brave enough to let me in. I have to tell her. I have to tell her. I have to tell her. She left the page open. I choose to believe that matters. I choose to believe that the part of us that knows what we need, before we have found the nerve to claim it, finds ways to make itself known anyway. Leaves a door ajar, drops a name, lets a page sit facing up on a counter, and hopes. Have you ever found out that someone had been quietly carrying something terrible to keep it from reaching you, and realized that the carrying was how they were saying the thing they couldn't say out loud? And is there someone whose name you would write 3 times, on the last page, if you knew they were going to come home and find it? Subscribe if this story stayed with you. Every week there is another one. And someone in the comments always ends up saying the thing the rest of us needed permission to say first.